talk about this here, and I'll bring up Flav's comment actually because I think it transitions very well into this. Flav says Brock was fine, missed a couple deep balls, happens, took care of the football, and won with Ayuk being a decoy. Hopefully he's okay. That's the only concern. Yeah, I mean, couple deep ball misses, and then really the most uncharacteristic miss to me from him was on that third down to Debo on the slant. That's the one that I was like, that's not Brock Purdy. He doesn't normally miss that. And so I'm not going into panic mode over Brock Purdy. And I've been very clear all off season, regardless of some of the emotion coming from people, that even if Brock Purdy had himself an awful game this year or multiple awful games, I'm a 3-year quarterback guy. So I'm not going to get too high or too low. What you're not going to see from me this year is when Brock Purdy plays bad, I'm not going to be the guy that's like, I told you so, he sucks. Not going to happen. It's just not going to happen this year. I got to see multiple years before I make a full decision on who he is or who he is not.
Absolutely. And I think that's and Flav, honestly, I could probably go back and forth before, but what you did say, what you're saying there, I'm not saying is there's nothing wrong with that. Missed a couple of deep balls, though we're not talking about 60 yards on a rope. We're talking about just a standard. I mean, 40 quarterbacks do have to throw the ball down the field on occasion. These weren't like Hail Mary, like I'm putting all of every ounce of my being into these throws. These are throws that NFL starting quarterbacks absolutely have to make. And we're talking about throws where the receivers had a minimum of 3 yards of separation. They just, and so I'm not saying he can't do it either. And like Jesse said, I'm not here to victory lap anything. I wish it weren't true in that case. I do think Brock can make those throws.
He's made them.
He has
made those throws.
And merely though mentioning that you got to hit those and we got to get those like tightened up. That's all people are saying. And it's not the sky is not falling for this team. I look at this team like they finished strong. They are united. They have a great roster. It's great, but yeah, it's not the end of the world. But it could have been for this game, not for the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like, the defense had a lot of, I mean, the defense was let's be real. The defense was getting carved up for a big chunk of that game. They had a ball that went their way where it bounced off the running back's hands. Oliver gets the interception and the whole game really seemingly changed right there. So the defense, I mean, I'm going to hold the defense accountable too. I mean, they were getting carved up. They just were. Now, of course, towards the end of the game, they stepped it up. They played much better. Kudos to them. But that game shouldn't have gotten to that point. And it kind of goes back to a couple things that I've been talking about. Number one is this team might be carried more by the offense than it has in years past. We'll see. But early on, I think that that's still a possibility. And I would say number two, there's a lot of money that is sitting there for the 49ers to spend still on lopsided trades, what have you. They get all their picks back this upcoming draft. Do they make a move at the trade deadline? And what is that move for? Is it for a defensive back? At this point, I think that seems that or the right side of the offensive line seem to be the biggest weaknesses, but it's really, really hard to trade for a good offensive lineman midseason. Corners, you can usually potentially make that kind of trade.
I think after today, Jesse, and look, Nick Bosa is going to get there. But let's be real. And all of a sudden, if you guys like constantly, people look at PFF grading system for, hold on one second. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. But yeah, you're. I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, the PFF grading system was, Nick Bosa was great. He was double team, triple team. Like, okay, I get that. He was virtually non-existent today, and he wasn't getting double and triple teamed all game. And I know it's because he hasn't had a lot of live reps in practice. And so that will come. I still see edge as a need. I still see Drake Jackson being a great athlete, but getting overwhelmed in certain situations by physicality and strength, and sometimes even by players that are not as strong as he is. And it's like, so to me, I keep saying this, forget about Brian Burns. There's a team in Minnesota that's looking at Caleb Williams or looking at one of these guys going down the pike. I really think Danielle Hunter would be an absolutely phenomenal ad. I think it is a need. I think the Niners do need help opposite Bosa. I know Drake Jackson had 3 sacks. 2 of them were cleanups last week. Doesn't diminish him at all. And Oh, did the 49ers only win by 7?
They didn't even cover his
Sean McVay just decided to screw Vegas.
The worst beat ever.
Wow. So anyway, yeah,
Awful.
I think edges. I still think that you can't have too many edge rushers, and I think that Danielle Hunter is all due respect to Drake Jackson, is a huge upgrade.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that doesn't mean that Jackson can't be a very good player or won't develop this year. But at this moment in time, Danielle Hunter is a premier pass rusher. Like that's just what it is. So you're saying, let me make sure I'm hearing you right, because I started out talking about the secondary possibly being the issue. You think it's more that they can't get home with 4, where in the past they've been able to. And so if they can get home with 4, you added Danielle Hunter or somebody like that it could rectify the back end. Is that kind of where you're going?
Yeah, and here's the thing. I think what Steve Wilkes said today is he said, hey, here's Puka Nacua, here's Tutu Atwell, here's Van Jefferson, here's Kyron Williams, here's Tyler Higbee. I'm not scared of those guys. We're going to play off the line of scrimmage. We're going to run. And it was a perfect storm of the 49ers' own doing, like falling on their own self-inflicted. Like that wasn't the right angle to take. They were not getting right. They were not jamming them at the line of scrimmage. They said, we're not going to let you be. I don't know why they were that worried about that. But yeah, like the 49ers weren't getting pressure. It wasn't like Stafford was just, quick hits and, the pressure was coming, but it was just coming a half second later. It wasn't. And so if the Niners can't get pressure with 4, it's a problem, because then they send Fred Warner. And there was a play when the game was tight near the end of the game where Steve Wilkes blitzes Fred Warner up the middle, gets blocked, and middle of the field on 4th down, and and they convert. I feel like you can't take Fred out of what he does best, and that's as a coverage linebacker and a guy that zones the middle. And so if you can't get pressure with 4, this defense will struggle. And I don't know if that's really the secondary's fault all the time. I just think, our philosophy really is, like, I think the Niners' philosophy in a lot of ways is that while quarterbacks are elite premium positions, defense is one of the trenches. And if you can't get it up front, you can only cover for so long. DBs have the hardest job. Cornerbacks have the hardest job in the NFL. They're at a disadvantage.
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely are. It's very hard to cover for 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds at a time. And the 49ers defensive line was not getting home, which is a little surprising because the Rams offensive line is not great. And they lost a player in that game. What was it? Second quarter? I think they lost Noteboom. So, the offensive line already isn't fantastic. Then they lose a starter, and it was still a bit of a struggle to get home with any sort of consistency. So it's something to keep an eye on. Again, this game to me, and Flav talked about it, and I couldn't agree more, really is kind of a week 1 game from the standpoint that with all the travel, you add in a division game, all those things, it makes sense that maybe things were a little sluggish. We'll see what it looks like on Thursday. Although, again, a short week, that can be tough as well. But it is the home opener. I think the 49ers fans will give them juice. We'll see how it goes.